Hey everyone, welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. I've been getting tons of requests for more of these, so I'm excited to bring you even more amazing tales. I'm having a blast finding some of the best stories out there to share with you all. So, grab a snack, get comfortable, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I never thought a simple job as a night security guard would turn into a nightmare. It seemed like an easy gig, decent pay, quiet hours, and just keeping an eye on things. But I couldn't have been more wrong. My story is not just about the strange noises or shadowy figures you might expect. It's about something far worse that I still can't fully comprehend. I got the job after seeing an ad online. It was for a large abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town that was recently purchased by a private investor. I was to be the only guard on duty, working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, making sure no one trespassed or vandalized the place. The property had been empty for years, but the new owners were planning renovations. In the meantime, they wanted to be sure nothing was stolen or damaged. It sounded easy enough, and I didn't think much about it. I signed the contract, underwent a brief training session, and showed up for my first shift with a flashlight, a radio, and a map of the warehouse. I figured it would be boring at worst and peaceful at best. I was wrong. The first night was uneventful, mostly. I spent most of my time walking the long, dimly lit corridors, my footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. The place was enormous, and the silence was almost oppressive. I started hearing faint noises around 2 a.m., soft thuds and scraping sounds, almost like something heavy being dragged across the floor. I radioed the security office about it, and they assured me it was probably the wind or the old building settling. It was an explanation that made sense until the noises started moving. Each time I stopped and listened, the sounds would come from a different direction, first in front of me, then behind. It felt as if something was shifting around, always staying just out of sight. But whenever I swung my flashlight, I saw nothing but empty space. I told myself I was imagining things, that my mind was playing tricks on me because it was late and I was tired. When my shift finally ended, I left the warehouse as fast as I could and told myself it would be better tomorrow. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. Second night, the first encounter. On my second night, I felt uneasy as soon as I walked through the main entrance. The temperature seemed to drop the moment I stepped inside, and the darkness felt thicker. About halfway through my patrol, the power cut out, plunging the entire warehouse into total darkness. The only light came from my flashlight, which suddenly felt much too small and weak. I radioed the security office, but no one answered. Static filled my earpiece, followed by a faint whisper. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but I was sure it wasn't English. It didn't sound like any language I'd ever heard. I swept my flashlight around, heart pounding, and saw something. Just for a second, a tall, shadowy figure standing at the end of the corridor. Its outline was barely visible in the dark, and before I could focus, it was gone. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light, but I felt watched for the rest of the shift. Every hair on my body stood on end, and I swore I saw movement in the corners of my eyes, just quick flashes of motion that disappeared when I turned to look. Third night, the scratching. By the third night, I was already on edge, but I didn't want to lose the job. I needed the money, and I was sure there had to be a rational explanation for everything that had happened. But that night, everything escalated. Around 3 a.m. I heard scratching. It started softly at first, like nails scraping across wood. The sound was coming from one of the back rooms, an area I hadn't really explored yet because it was locked. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, almost desperate, and then it stopped suddenly. I held my breath, waiting, listening, and then the locked door, creaked open. It swung slowly, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. I should have run. Every instinct in my body told me to get out of there, to leave and never come back. But something drew me closer, almost as if I were in a trance. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness as I stepped inside the room. There was nothing there, just old furniture covered in dusty sheets, a broken desk and empty shelves. I turned to leave, feeling foolish, and that's when I heard it. A low, guttural voice, whispering my name from the far corner of the room. Fourth night, the locked room. I didn't sleep the next day. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even in my own home. My boss dismissed my concerns when I called him, and I decided to finish out the week. On my fourth night, I noticed something strange. The locked room was open again, despite my boss's assurance that no one else had access. I hesitated, but forced myself to go inside. The air was ice cold, and I saw something that made my blood freeze. There, scrawled on the walls, in what looked like old, dried blood, were messages. They were written in a language I couldn't read, but they all ended with my name. My full name. I backed out of the room slowly, too scared to turn my back to it. As I left, the door slammed shut behind me, and my flashlight flickered and died. I ran as fast as I could, back to the main entrance, where I found the lights flickering erratically, casting strange shadows across the floor. Fifth night, the final shift. I didn't want to go back. I called in sick, and they insisted I finish my shift. My heart was racing before I even stepped inside, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. Round 2 a.m., the radio crackled to life with static, and a voice broke through. A voice I recognized as my own. It said, "You shouldn't have come back." I dropped the radio and heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The footsteps grew louder, getting closer. I knew there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. The last thing I saw before I passed out was a face. A pale, twisted face, inches from mine, staring with eyes that burned like embers. The aftermath. I woke up in the hospital. My boss said they found me unconscious in the middle of the warehouse floor. They tried to tell me I'd had a panic attack, that the stress had gotten to me, but I knew better. I quit the job immediately, but I can't escape what happened. I still hear the whispers at night, and sometimes I see that same shadowy figure out of the corner of my eye. I don't know what's real anymore, and I don't think I ever will. All I know is that I'll never take another night shift again. If you ever come across a job listing for a night security guard at an abandoned warehouse, don't take it. Some things are better left in the dark.